Hello and welcome to Celebrate Freedom TV. I am very, very, very excited about today's show as we are revealing the process of healing through the Word of God. I thank you for tuning in this morning, for taking the time out this morning to tune in and check us out. Please, if you are doing anything else, I know right now you might be, making your orange juice and your eggs and your breakfast and all that good stuff. But this doesn't cost you a thing. I need you to right now like and share this video, this podcast, this talk show, whatever you want to call it. Like and share it. It doesn't cost you a thing, okay? I believe that our freedom story today is going to be very powerful. It's going to be very informative, especially if you have a youth that is struggling with blaming God or is just struggling with seeing the connection of Christ through the eyes of disappointment and tragedy. So I need you to like and share. All right. So next, always want you to stay connected. All right. On social media right now, we're on Facebook. Stay connected. Go to @Celebrate Freedom on Facebook, and we will be more than happy to take your follow. Okay. Thank you so much. Also, it has been asked, and I will deliver. If you want to follow me personally, please go to @Life Factory on Facebook. I do think that page is going to be a blessing to you. So please follow that. Today's show is very, very dear to my heart because I love youth. I love dealing with youth. I love the fact of youth are our future. They are where we're going, and they will take us to new heights and new depths. However, some of our youth and a lot of our youth have faced traumatic situations. They faced being bullied. They faced being mistreated. They faced just disappointments in life. And the enemy has tried to attack the belief in Christ and the belief for more through life situations. We have so many young people that need encouragement. It is very challenging to try to find God through tragedy, as it is. And in a world where tragedy can be commonplace, it's always wonderful to hear stories of triumph over tragedy. So I want to implore you to pay attention to today's story. Today's freedom story is not just one of experience, but it is one of choice. It is one where you have to understand God, love God, move God, even as a youth, in order to understand it. Today's guest back in 2019 had to witness a loved one, and I'll let her get into more of the story, a loved one, losing their life as a result of saving her. What an amazing feat of bravery. However, she lost a family member in the process of that. It can be easy to blame God and be mad at God and be upset at God, especially in the world of youth now, where you are being pretty much told to, however you feel is however you feel, But I'm grateful for today to have a young person, a youth from these generations, to speak on her journey, from her journey in dealing with this issue. She is a podcaster, as well as she's a podcaster. She's a world changer. I'm going to let her get more into it, but she does have a podcast called #TWENTIES, Healing, Love, and Life. Her name is LOUISE, and we're going to invite her on to the show. How you doing today?
Hey, Pastor Marquette.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing pretty good today.
I know that's right. Listen, first and foremost, I just want to thank you for accepting the invitation. And I want to just commend your bravery, for sharing your story. You are an influencer in my eyes. I don't care, what nobody say, but you are an influencer, and especially a voice to the young people. So I am very excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm so excited.
All right. So do me a favor. Can you get a little closer to your mic or turn your mic up?
Yes. Can you
There
hear
we
me better?
go. Yes, there we go. Because I want people to hear you. You hear me? All right. So without further ado, I'm gonna turn it over into your hands and share with us your freedom story.
Um. Okay. So I will just go completely from the beginning. So around 2018, my mom and I became homeless. So I would say probably around August of 2018, if I'm recalling correctly. But we became homeless, and we were sleeping from hotel to hotel, and then towards December we started sleeping in our car. And um, as we were sleeping in our car, we were just going. It was just so much. My mom, on the other hand, she was praying and fasting for a breakthrough. But me, on the other hand, like I just couldn't see past our current situation. Like I couldn't see how we were gonna get out of living in our car.
Wow. Right.
That was just something that was just really, really hard for me. And my mom was
Mm-hmm.
always like, we need to get on the same page. We need to be in this together. And I couldn't get on board. So January came around, and as my mom's child, I was always like that one that was always planning, trying to find out what we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so the week of her passing, I had literally found us a place to stay. I had found us a home and everything, and we had scheduled an appointment to meet with the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so January 9th is the day that she passed away. It was like a normal day.
Wow.
We, I would go to work with her. She worked at Tennessee State University. And so I would go to work with her. And this particular night, it was freezing. And I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I really don't want to walk from the gas station to the car, from the car back to the gas station to the car. Like it was just a lot of walking. It was cold, but we had to get gas for our car. And so that kind of led into us having like a disagreement on the city bus, because we would ride the city bus to work. And she ended up saying, okay, well, do you just want to get off at the stop before the one we normally get off at?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, cool, we can do that. And then as we're walking, we walked down towards the railroad tracks, and we stopped. We waited for traffic to pass. And me and my mom, like, I'm my mama's baby. Like, we holding hands. Like, that's just how it was with my mom. Like, my mom was my best friend. She was my everything. And so as we're walking across the street, I hear my mom say, "Move, Twinkie." That was her nickname for me. She called me
Mm-hmm.
Twinkie.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Move, Twinkie," and she pushed me back into like the second lane, because we were in the third lane.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked to the left, and I saw a yellow light, and I saw a car, and then I saw my mom get hit.
Wow.
And it wasn't until like later on that I actually thought back about that night. But in the midst of all of that going on, there was nothing but like peace and quiet. Like you would have thought it was like midnight and there were no cars on the road. Like that's
Wow.
how quiet it was in that moment. And I never thought about it in that time, but it was just so traumatic for me. And I didn't realize that I actually needed trauma therapy until my good sis Yanni told me. She was like, "You need trauma therapy." I thought that I was just grieving. Like that's what I
Mm-hmm.
thought. And I've talked about this before on my blog and on my podcast. Like for me to see my mom laying there, I always describe it as something on The Walking Dead. Like I always describe it as that. Like that's the closest description I can get. It's just
Wow.
something that I've never been able to mentally come back from. I
Right.
am in trauma therapy working through that, but it has been really, really hard for me. I've had continuous flashbacks, and just it was just a lot.
I mean, I could definitely understand why it would be a lot. I mean, how old were you at the time?
So I had just turned 21 in July.
Wow.
And it's crazy because like the whole year before I turned 21, my mom was just constantly like pouring into me. And she was like, I have to get all of this into you before you turn 21. And I'm like, Mom, like, it's not that serious. Like, I'm just 21, nothing's gonna change. And it would just be like little things. And I don't know what people believe, but I really believe that sometimes our spirits know when our time is coming, because it would be like little things that she would say to me, like, she would be like, some people don't want to go, and she would look at me all sad, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean?
So,
and so that whole year she just poured and poured and poured into me.
So just to not paint a picture, but to, you are 21 years old. You got life. You're experiencing new things. How long did y'all actually live in the car?
We started living in the car. We actually lived in the car. We were on and off in the car because we stayed in the hotels from like August till January, March, April, May, June, July, August. So I'll say August to maybe September. And then around Thanksgiving, we had went and stayed with my granny for a little while. But she stayed in like a senior high rise, so we couldn't stay forever. And then after that, we started sleeping in our car.
So you was like 19, 20?
No, I had turned 21 in July of 2018. And excuse me, because we were sleeping in our car when it was hot. We were sleeping in our car through all the seasons, okay? Because leather seats. It was hot.
that they were sticking to you.
It was hot, and it was, and I was irritated. I was mad. I was upset. And then that's when we started staying in hotels. And then, of course, hotels get expensive. Extended stay expensive.
Right.
And so our brakes had went out in our car, and that's how we ended up getting in the same spot that we had been in. Because now we can't drive to work, so we had to start taking the city bus.
Right.
It overall was just a depressing situation. And I think for my mom and I talked a lot during that time. And, I just think her as a parent, it was a really rough time for her, like to not be able to take care of not just herself but her time.
Right.
So it was really, I ain't gonna, wasn't the nicest, I wasn't the nicest to her in that time period. And so definitely after her passing, I had a lot of regret. I blame myself for her passing. After she passed away, I was like, she died because I wouldn't get on board. I couldn't agree, that we would get out of this situation. It was my fault because if I hadn't have been lazy, we never would have went that way. I dealt with a lot of that. I beat myself up for, I would say, probably about 2 years after since her passing. And I turned my heart, and I turned away from God for 2 years. I was mad.
Right. And that's the part, that was the part. So here you are, 21 years old. You're already in a situation that's not the best. So you're dealing with that already as it is. Now, and all the emotions that come with that, people, what are people saying? There's stuff, all the emotions as a young person that come with that. You want to wear the Jordans, and you want to wear, the best of this and that, you want to do these things, but you can't right now because you got to help your mom, and out of this situation. You probably wanted to, had dreams and goals and aspirations and, wanted to do things, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But now as a result of, whatever the situation is in the circumstance, you're unable to, and you're thrust into this adulthood, that you could have really turned, the other way, so I want to ask you, how did you deal with the pressure of wanting to be, wanting to have those things and being young, and then being in a situation with mom? Like, what were your scapegoats? How did you calm down? Did you turn to anything? Talk to me about that. Look.
So I had actually, when I came home from college, I went to University of Memphis. And I came home from college because my mom had gotten sick.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and we had this real codependent relationship. Like,
Wow.
because I was so, I was gone literally I was only 3 hours away, but to her, it felt like 6 hours. So it was like, she was overextending herself with working. Like, she was trying to overwork herself.
Mm-hmm.
So when she ended up getting sick, I already wanted to come home anyway because I wanted to pursue film. And the school that I was going to, their film program was whack. Like, I'm working with digital, I need a digital camera, okay? Like, why are we working with film cameras? So when I had came home, my initial plan was to move to Atlanta to pursue my career. Like, that had always been my end goal. But, with everything that kind of happened with her, I think in a way I kind of resented her in a way, because it was like, I felt like I had to put my life on pause to yet again take care of you. Like, that's how I felt. And I think that was kind of that underlying resentment that I had towards her that I didn't realize that I had until later on, after she passed away. But I had even at one point while we were homeless, I told her that I hated her. And I felt like that at that moment. But I don't really mean it. But in that moment, that's how I felt. Because it's like, here we are, yet again in a situation that is not good. And, and at the time, I won't say that I was the, following God and things like that. But and I couldn't see how you're having this big of a faith in our situation. I'm like, you need to do something physically. Like, you can't just say God will provide and God will do this and just sit around and not do nothing. Like, that was my attitude.
And that's so great that you said that, because the title is God really the blame?
Right.
Now, especially with Christian parents who don't have the evidence of the fruits of serving God active in their life. It is very challenging to follow anyone who doesn't have the fruits. We can sit here and we can say, okay, now there are situations that you run into, there are situations that you can't help, but then there's situations where you just keep praying to God, and God keeps saying, listen, I'm putting the ball back in your court. I need you to do this. I need you to have discipline in this. I need you to do that. And, you grow up seeing your parents have one view or one whatever. And then you start to realize when you become of age, like, wait a minute, you want me to do the same thing you doing in this moment. And there's no fruits at all. There's nothing that's saying, God will provide, God will, manifest, God will. So you started seeking God for yourself, it sounds like, and saying, wait a minute,
it went right off. It went right off.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that then, since you brought that up. So what do you feel comfortable telling us, were some things as a young person that you reached out to before you reached out to God in this situation?
I definitely was coping with marijuana. That was like my main cope. Like, and it wasn't like a one joint a day. It was like multiple, 4 or 5, 6. Like, I wanted to physically, mentally, and emotionally feel numb.
Right.
After he passed away. I mean, it would get so bad. Like, I would literally use my last money. Like, if I had $20 and that was all I had, I'm getting weed. Like, that's how bad it was.
Right.
And my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, like, that was something that we really had to talk about, because we paying bills together. Like, it became an addiction. And I know some people say, marijuana is not addiction, but I think that we can get addicted to it, because we can get addicted to numbing those emotions or numbing how we feel, numbing our mind. But in reality, it's like it only lasts for a short moment of time, which is
Say that again. It only lasts for a short amount of time. And young people don't realize, not all, but there's a lot of young people out there right now that are listening to this, and they're saying, okay, they're in this situation. Their alcohol, drugs, all that stuff are instant gratifications, and they are not going to solidify your peace, like you said. And I have the same story. Weed was my drug of choice. by the pound. You hear me?
Now
So
what?
we could, when I tell you, look, we was at least smoking an ounce a day, somewhere around in there, you
I
know.
I could do that.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So, but what I realized, even when I was, when I was in my 17, 18, 19, 20s, it was all a coping mechanism to leave the world that I was in.
Right.
So, and the reason that I'm glad you're going this route is because the title, the what God put on my heart to bring out is that this generation, you can't blame God for everything that this generation is doing. You can't, in other words, there are certain situations that our parents did put us in, and parents can put kids in certain situations that causes undue stress, unnecessary stress. It's hard enough being young as it is,
Yeah.
more or less you got to come home to fussing, arguing. No,
Yep.
it's cold outside, you ain't got no heat, and now you got to deal with, you're dealing with this particular aspect, and you sitting like, okay, this is too much. So continue. You started out, you turned to marijuana, you turned to
Um.
weed.
Yes, I turned to weed. And I ain't gonna even lie to you. I even turned to new age spirituality. Like I would
Mm-hmm.
get into crystals, and
Into
things
what
of that.
now?
Crystals. I
Oh,
was
okay.
got into that, and what what really pulled me out of it was nobody but God.
Right.
But I had went out of town. I think I had went to Vegas or something, and Davion, my husband, had told me, he was like, I saw a figure while you were gone. And when I got back from Vegas, I packed up everything. I threw away everything, because it's one thing to put my soul in jeopardy or put
Mm-hmm.
myself in jeopardy, but one thing I'm not going to do is put you in jeopardy, as as somebody that I love and care about. And so a little bit after that, we had ended up moving to Atlanta. And when I moved to Atlanta, I got the worst of it. Like I
Mm.
was fine when I was in Nashville, because of course I had friends and
Mm-hmm.
I had things to consume my time. But when just me and my dog, Davion was working all the time. So it's literally, I'm in the house 24/7. And it was just, I just felt like I was being tormented, like
Mm.
mentally. And I had my first ever mental breakdown. And
Mm.
it was so bad to the point I literally felt sick mentally. And I've never felt that way a day in my life.
Wow.
And so that night I started looking for therapists. I said I need help. Like that
Mm-hmm.
night I said I need some help. A little bit after that, God told me, he was like, I need you to stop smoking. You cannot hear me when you are high. And that's so true. Like my mind was high all day. I can't hear you. Like, I can't hear what you're telling me. I can't hear any instructions. I can't hear anything. And that was something that me and my brother used to do all the time. We used to smoke all the time, all day, all night. And so that was one of my relationships that kind of went with, when I stopped smoking weed, that relationship just kind of went with it. Like I
Right.
stopped, our relationship kind of, took a turn. It went left,
Mm-hmm.
because we stopped talking for like 6 months after that.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to, like, that was something I had to do. And I'm not saying that, after God told me that, I just gave it up, because it was still a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But God kind of took that craving away from me. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was really the first step for me. And then the second step for me after that was definitely getting into therapy. I started going to grief therapy. But I also will say I didn't really use my grief therapy wisely. I more so used it to avoid what was really going on eternally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would use it to I was just wasting money. I just wasting money, talking to her about everything else, but what was really going on with me. The real
Right.
reason why I ended up going.
Right.
And so from there, I would take late night drives, and I would just talk, and I would just cry to God. One night I was driving downtown, and that was the first night I had said to myself, for myself, that I accept you as my Lord as Jesus, I accept you into my heart as my Lord and Savior. That was the first night I had did that. Because as a kid, you get baptized. Your parents kind of force you into Christianity or a relationship with God, but you really don't discover God for yourself until you actually do it.
Right.
So from there, I had already had my podcast. I had started my podcast in 2019, and I used it as a healing platform just so I could kind of start to get back to myself. But it actually wasn't until probably this year when I actually started understanding what my podcast is really for. God he's just really been working on me. I won't even say that I feel like I'm at my full level yet, but I am definitely growing and going in the direction that he needs me to go into. But it was not a pretty process.
Right, and you introduced the other side of this, which is the that healing aspect. And here's my question: as a young person who did turn to alternative spirituality, what how did you know that God was the ultimate God? Because as we have young people that they turn to goth, Satanism, they've turned to other belief systems, because of hurt, whether it was tragedy, whether it was how were you able to decipher and say, there's only one true God, and that's him?
I grew up in church, so that was, and I've also learned that a lot of kids grow up in church, and we be the main ones that turn our hearts and turn away from God. But I will say, Davion, my husband, even when I was doing what I was doing, he never strayed away. He never turned his heart away from God. And just by me going through what I was going through, I still wasn't satisfied. When I was doing them crystals and stuff, I didn't even know what I was doing. Like I was just doing what what people was talking about, and what was, new information coming out, and things of that nature, listening to people on social media telling us this and telling us that. And I'm like, well, this must be right because everybody is doing it. But in reality, I was just looking for something to fill this void that I had for so long. And that was the void. And it wasn't filling anything because it wasn't accomplishing anything. I was still in the same situation. And if I'm being honest, I think it wasn't doing anything for me but making mess and putting me in a darker space. And I think people need to realize that, because it's like, people think they're talking to the ancestors, but really they're not. You're talking to demons and things of that nature. So it's like that's doing nothing but putting you in a darker space. You wonder why you're being tormented. You wonder why your mind is full of negativity, suicidal thoughts, and it's just it's
so,
not people make it out
so
to be.
So let's talk to that youth out there right now that may have taken gothic views, or may have taken and said, what, I was and again, the ones that go the left the most are the church raised kids. Church kids, for some reason, just do not know how to handle hurt. And you get hurt, you get hurt. So here's my question. And why do you think that you rebelled against what was put into you? What made you say, I know I was raised in church and I'm going through this situation, but I'm going to rebel because something else has to be better than this?
So I think personally for me, even though I grew up in church, I will say that I feel like church was forced on me. I don't feel like my mom gave me the opportunity to actually learn and experience and build a relationship with God on my own. Like, it's one thing we going to church, get dressed, get up. You're forcing me to go, but you're not really explaining to me, the importance of God or even who God is. Like, we only going to church on Wednesdays. So,
pause. That's wait. Pause. Okay, because that is such a good point. you want to know, this generation wants to know the why.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what it is. If mayonnaise goes on a sandwich, you want to know why, you know. And what you're saying is you're bringing out a very valid point here, that all you were asking for is to not the fact that, Mom, I don't want to go to church, but I do need to know the significance of why we're doing this. So do you believe there's a difference between children who are just asking why versus kids who just, I'm not doing it, Mom. I'm not doing it. You know, you think there's a difference there?
I don't think so. I think when
Wow.
I think when kids say, you know, I'm not doing it, it is because they don't understand why. It's not, you know, I think that is really the main reason, because it's like, you know, and two, they could feel like you are forcing them to into something that they don't understand themselves. So if you're forcing them into something that they don't understand, and then you're not even taking the time to explain to them, and then they might not even feel comfortable asking, one, because you already forcing me to do it. So, you know, and then two, if you're not being that representation of, you know, Jesus in the church, it's like, I really don't even ask you anyway, because who are you to tell me, you know, why it's important for me to have a relationship with God, and you out here, you know, acting how you acting, you know, you going to church and being holy, but you cussing me out in the car on the way there. Like, it doesn't.
Right. So now I'm a firm believer in this part. Okay. I'll say this much. All right. This much, that there are standards, you know, that people have in their households, you know, and one of those standards are, you know, you're going to go to church. Now, why can't the mindset be, you know, this is a standard, this is something that, you know, the family's going to do, so I'm going to you know, abide by the rules, you know, I'm going to go, you know, what go ahead and, you know,
I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, but what I'm saying is as kids, we don't grow up just we don't come out born having a relationship with God. All I'm saying is if you're gonna say this is what our family does, this is why I feel like as parents, you should explain this is why we love God, because God has provided this for us, God has done this for us, or, you know, at least explain to us so that we can seek our own relationship with him, not just you're gonna go because this is what we do and I told you to do it. It's not, I don't feel like that's a problem with us saying this is what we do as a family, and you know, in this house we serve the Lord. I don't see that as a problem. I see it as a problem when you force it on them and then you don't explain the why, because as kids some kids don't have relationships with God, and it's because they don't know how to seek a relationship with God. Because their parents, my mama used to tell me this all the time, parents are the first teachers. Like, I'm real big on that. Like, parents are the first teachers. If your parents are not teaching you how to seek God, how to have a relationship with God, who are you to force me to do something and you're not teaching me why I should do this?
It's interesting because, you know, last night in Celebrate Freedom, we talked about unhealthy goals, and we're talking about healthy goals. And part of those unhealthy goals is a mother, like, for example, a father or a mother who says, I am going to, my goal in life is to make sure that my child has a relationship with God.
Right.
And remember last night I said, well, what do you think that is, congregation, a healthy goal or unhealthy goal? And everybody was, that's a healthy goal. That's a healthy goal.
Control that.
But you can't control that. That's an unhealthy goal. And I think that when and we said last night that unhealthy goals are parameters that you put around people that you can't control. Changes you want to have happen that you can't control. Now, I can control my son and my daughter and them going to church, but I can't control God's watering on their life and the way he does it. And why is this important? This is important because lots of times we think that youth are going through rebellious times when really the question is why.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? The question is why. It's not the fact that youth are being rebellious or being mean or being this. We have to realize that in this dispensation, in this generation, the question of why is being asked more and more and more and more. I'm telling you, I found that I am more effective with youth, even my own children, when I answer the why first. Mm-hmm. When I'm able to say, okay, this is why we're doing it, just like you said.
Right.
But this is why this title is Healing Youth. Is God really the blame, or have parents inadvertently put unhealthy goals on the children? And now we're living in a situation where this is just food for thought, because I know I may get some rocks, what do you mean? What do you, I know I may get some rocks, but this edition right here is from the perspective of youth. That's what we were, of the millennial. That's what I want to, I wanted to bring out. I think you millennial. What are you? You millennial?
I'm 24. I don't want to be considered Gen Z. Okay,
you Gen Z, ain't you?
They eat Tide Pods.
Because right now we got millennials battling Gen Zs, and it's just not working. And because the millennials came up under do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. So now we're like, okay, I don't see the fruits of what you do.
Right.
So I'm asking you to explain to me why I should trust in the way that you're trusting when you've been broke for 40 years. I've seen you, you ain't had, every time you get something, you don't never talk to God. You don't trust God. You just, you just pray. You so holy that you can't explain nothing to me. Okay. Right. I mean, we just holy, and you can't explain nothing. And we're losing a generation because of that connection of why, is God really the blame? We have to stop putting unhealthy goals around this next generation. Mm-hmm. And we have to start putting the goals around ourselves to be the examples that we need to be. So in your healing, in your healing process, man, how, like you said, you saw your mom pass away in front of you. How did you deal with your perspective of God in that situation?
That's a good question. So, like I said, for 2 years, I was mad. Like, I really was like, I couldn't understand why she had to go that way and why I had to be there to experience it. And, me and my mama had plans. Like, we was going to start a YouTube channel and, we would make all these plans. Like, me and my mama together, like multi-million-dollar ideas. Like, we would just be pew, 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 pew. So, I'm thinking, I had time. Like, it was just something that just happened just out of the blue. And I was so angry. And because I felt like I was forced to become an adult so fast, because my mom, I will say, the one thing I will say about my mom as a parent is my mom was not one of those parents that were like, you need to get up, get a job. She wasn't like that. Like, my mom understood. Like, every time I would get a job, my mama would laugh at me and I would be like, what's funny? And she'd be like, I don't know why you getting a job. You're not going to keep it. And I would think that she was being mean, but it wasn't because she was being mean. But my mom saw that I was meant for more than just working a 9 to 5. Like, she knew that. And so that was something that we would talk about all the time. Like, when it came to business ideas, like, she was excited to talk to me about that. So every time I would get a job, like, she wasn't like one of those parents. Like, as long as I was doing good, doing what I needed to do, pursuing my passions, like, my mama would move mountains to get me into whatever I wanted to do. Like, I remember she spent like $2,500 getting me into a acting agency. Like, that's how my mama was. Like, she knew at a young age that I was destined for something else other than.
Oh Lord! And you were still mean. You were still mean. That sounds like you were spoiled rotten.
I was
Spoiled.
very spoiled. I was
Mm,
very spoiled. I'm the only child from my
mm-hmm.
mom. So very spoiled. Very, very spoiled. You know, my mom, but she sheltered me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get to experience life until after I went to college. And so after my mom passed, and you know, for 2 years, I was very, 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 very angry with God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But somehow, some way, my heart changed. And I do say that I think that Davion added a lot to that, because he Davion is an example of how Christ, he is that example. Like, he just never turned away from Christ. He's
Wow.
loving, he's caring, and he's
Wow.
always grateful for just the small things.
Wow.
And me, you know, when we first got together, I was selfish, I was self-centered. It was all about me, you know. But this
Right.
is how I grew up. Like, I'm the only child. I ain't got to worry about nobody else. It's all
Right.
about me. That's how I grew up. So it was very hard for me to transition and transform, but I will definitely say that him being that example,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, and giving me an example to actually look at, I was like, it's something about him. Like, what is that?
Wow. So, man, that's so powerful. So, you needed an example. You didn't,
I
and
needed an
you
example.
needed not just you. You understood the words,
Right.
but you needed, and this is what I'm saying: is God really the blame? I just want to spark. Listen, parents and loved ones, and I just want to spark just just a different perception. Okay, uh, you know, we sometimes have to really look and say, okay, I just don't understand my children. All right. We've been there. However, God knows your child. God knows what your child needs. And all this generation is pretty much saying is, hey, we need an example. We need someone that's going to not just tell us and beat us, beat the word over our heads, but someone that's going to show us at the same time. And we're going to know if you're really living what you're saying.
Another thing I will say that really helped me to really come back to God is how patient Davion was with me. I was going through a lot. I'm talking about mentally, emotionally, and he never was impatient with me, not once.
Right.
So I was listening to a pastor in Texas, and he said that our parents and our fathers are the first people, or supposed to be the first example of God that we get. And even both of my parents are gone. My dad passed away last year. So Davion for me was that example of that patience, the unconditional love. And because he was giving it to me, I wanted it from him all the time. And I became very, very clingy. Mm-hmm. And so I had to find a way to get it somewhere else. And that's how I kind of started building my own relationship with God. Because I said, if I'm getting this from him and he's a human, I can only imagine what God is going to give me.
Wow.
So it was just, God healed me from so many things. He had to heal me from my tainted identity, because the way I saw myself, I couldn't pursue what he needed me to pursue. It took me a long time to go full-time content creation. He had been telling me full-time, and I just wouldn't do it out of fear. And because of how I saw myself and my tainted identity from childhood and bullying and just grief, trauma, depression, all of that. And it just tainted how I looked at myself. Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't pursue what God needed me to do. And I was fearful. And he really has been where it's taken me so much to get to this space. I have started and stopped so much in my life.
But guess what? How old are you now?
I'm 24 now.
You have plenty of life to live.
Yes.
And just like you said, we're getting ready to go to another phase of the show here. But just like you said, you had to get rid of how you your tainted view of yourself.
Right.
Your tainted view of yourself. And once you started seeing, it's very powerful. You say, you know what? I got clingy because I found what I was looking for in him.
Right.
Or so you thought. So you got a lot of young marriages out there, right? A lot of young marriages. And, when you start talking about looking for that filler, he was just that constant in your life. Just constant. Even though you realize that he was going to be there, you still also realize that only one thing can fill that void, and that's God. And I'm telling you, the more that you adhere to his word, the more that you push in and press in, the more he's going to bring that thirst to full. So y'all look, you can't get all of her stuff right now. Okay. I know I get it. You can't get all of it. Okay. This young lady has a very powerful podcast called the Twisted 20s. I'm going to put the graphic on the screen and tell us about your podcast. Okay.
So I actually just updated my podcast cover. My podcast cover originally was very black, very dull. And I feel like the podcast fit what part of my life I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And I changed my podcast cover, I think last year, to this podcast cover because I felt like I was coming into a new season of healing, love, really just figuring out my life. And so I said, I can't with this dull background no more. This is not who I am anymore. I was
exactly
dark. So my favorite color is pink. So of course I had to do that. But my podcast is about it's just geared around my own self-revelations, things I've been through, processing, and it's literally about things that I'm going through in my current life, things that God has been revealing to me. I have an episode about self-sabotaging with fear, which is something that I have done for a long time. My previous episode is about tainted identities and recovering from failures. And then next week, Babe will be on on my podcast. We are doing a podcast episode together. It's gonna be basically a playoff from self-sabotaging with fear, but it's about I was ready to leave it all behind because I really was ready to leave everything behind that God had been telling me because of fear.
Wow.
So my podcast is definitely geared around reminding God's people of their purpose. And I believe that each and every single one of us was created with a purpose and for a purpose. And it is up to us to align with the purpose and the will that God has for our lives.
Wow. What an amazing story. What an amazing young woman. T. Louise, this is not going to be the last time we have you on this show. Okay. All right. I need y'all to go now to her website, to her podcast. I'm going to put that info up one more time down here in the lower.
So make sure y'all read.
Yeah. Oh, she said she has blogs on the website. So again, here's the podcast, and that's on where is Apple?
It's on all major platforms. Apple,
all major platforms.
Spotify, everybody. Google.
Go check her blogs out. All right, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna check you if you do it. Okay. Yes, go check it out.
I normally put like my podcast episodes in blog format because sometimes people don't like to listen to audio. So I like sometimes, not all of them, but only some of them. But I post 3 new blogs every week. Well,
you're a very busy young lady. Well, we love you and thank you again for being on the show. Thank you so much. And this will not be the last time. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. So can you imagine what she had to go through in order to get to where she is now? Anything is possible. Anything is possible. And I want to speak to a young person out there who has heard this story and said, you know what? I might not be as strong to do this on my own. I want you to know that you can send your request for prayer right here on the screen. Okay. Send your request for prayer. We want to work with you. We have a team that's ready to work with you. We have so many resources that can help you get to that next place. Okay. and then take another step. And if you're in the McDonough area, I want you to come and join us on Tuesday evenings for Celebrate Freedom. That is the evangelistic, quote unquote, congregational aspect of our program. We will love to have you on that night. Now, you cannot battle this alone. You need a church family, a church home, okay? And if you're ever in the McDonough area, come check us out, 9 a.m. and 11:15 a.m., 154 Jonesboro Road. Listen, this show has been amazing. I need you to go like and share again. I cannot wait to see you again next week. So look, celebrate freedom. We are here for you to reveal the process of the healing power of God. Thank you for joining in today, and we will see you next week, same place, same time.